Golf's not just a game and it's not played on just grass. Lawn Solutions Australia is the home of Australia's best sports turf of varieties. For the world's best grasses like Tiff Tuff, Sir Grange, Primo and Trinity, contact Lawn Solutions Australia at lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. That's lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. Hello and welcome to episode 49 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing exploration of what draws people to this crazy game. My name's Rod Murray, and alongside my colleague John Huggan, we bring you these in-depth interviews every 2 weeks with people from every imaginable facet of the game. On this episode, Huggy has managed to score some time with a man whose voice will be instantly recognisable to most as one of the game's longest-serving on-course analysts. Roger Maltbie has been with the NBC network since 1992. Some of our younger listeners may not even know that he was a very successful professional long before he ever held a microphone. John Huggan joins me now to give us a taste of what we can expect in this chat. Huggy, how do you know Roger Maltbie?
Well, I know him from my time at Golf Digest in the States, which is a long time ago now. But, I mean, I was kind of drawn to him because I don't know how I found out, but his mother, this is, terrible bias on my part, but his late mother was Scottish. She was from a place called Kirkintilloch, which is near Glasgow. She was the classic GI bride, as Roger relates in the interview. I think his father was in the American Air Force during the Second World War and met his future wife at a local dance, and 3 weeks later he proposed. Yeah. And whisked her back off to America.
Yeah, so we won't tell too much. We won't tell too much of the story because it is indeed a fabulous one.
Yeah,
it's funny with TV commentators, isn't it, Huggy? I was thinking about this in relation to Maltbie. I reckon I was well into my 20s before I understood that Richie Benaud, a famous cricket commentator here in Australia, had actually played for Australia. In my world, and when I grew up, he was just a commentator, and Maltbie would be that, wouldn't he, for a whole generation of golf fans.
Yeah, well, I think he's got slightly regrets about that. I mean, he was a hell of a good player. Sure. I mean, he won the first Memorial tournament, Jack Nicklaus's tournament. Roger Maltbie won the very first one. And the famous playoff, which is, infamous in Australia, I guess, that Greg Norman lost to Larry Mize's chip-in, Roger Maltbie was one shot from being in that playoff. So, hell of a good player.
Yeah, absolutely. No slouch. And, of course, the other thing about Maltbie, which anybody who's done any sort of background checking will know, is that he's quite the character as well, Huggy, quite the raconteur, isn't he?
Oh, yes.
And it's a side of his personality we don't really get to see, I guess, so much with the commentary. But what a fabulous storyteller he is, and what some fabulous stories he's got.
Yeah, he's a great, as you say, storyteller. And and maybe this is the Scottish half of his heritage, but I think he has enjoyed a few refreshing alcoholic beverages in his time, which he doesn't deny. I'm not telling tales out of school.
No, indeed. In fact, I just read on Twitter the other day, right? I think it was Rob Lusetich said that Roger Maltbie is one of the greats to sit down and share a glass of wine and lunch with, and I don't doubt that would be.
I can confirm that. I mean, I've had many great chats with him. He's a fascinating character and great to listen to, which hopefully the listeners to this podcast will agree when they've heard it.
I think they will. Last thing, Huggy, we often accuse television people of going too soft on people, and the relationship between networks and the tour and puts people in awkward positions. What's your take on Maltbie and his commentary? I've always found him a really good analyst, and he tends to stick to the golf.
He does. Well, he's basically the on-course guy, so he's not on for. He doesn't get the chance to expand on much when you're in that role, but he's very, very good at. Obviously, he's having played at the level he did. He's incredibly good at describing the shot and what the options are and what the player is likely to do, which is why he's lasted as long as he has, I guess.
Yeah, indeed he has, and we look forward to hearing some more of Roger Maltbie, both on the television and in this chat. Thanks for joining me, Huggy, and we'll get on with Roger Maltbie.
My pleasure. Roger Maltbie, thank you very much for coming on the Thing About Golf podcast. I always start these things with the same question. What's the thing about golf for you?
Well, as I've gotten older, and I'm not very good at the first 18 holes, it's become more about the 19th hole. I'm still pretty good there.
Is that something to do with the Scottish blood in your veins? I know we've talked many years ago. You've got quite a strong Scottish connection. Can you run me through that?
Well, certainly. I don't know if my affinity for the spirit comes from my background or my heritage, but my mother was born in Kirkintilloch, just outside Glasgow, and met my father during the Second World War. He was a Yankee flyboy, flew P-47s, flew 98 missions, but she was a nurse, and they met at some dance, a mixer thing, and like 3 weeks later, my father proposed, and they were married, and
he didn't hang about.
64 years. Pardon me?
He didn't hang about then?
No. He knew what he liked right away. And apparently it went both ways. So, yeah, a long marriage. I've lost them both. Just lost Dad a couple of years ago and was still playing golf 3 days a week at age 94.
So your mum was the classic GI bride?
Absolutely. And Dad would, I didn't learn this until later, but apparently after the end of the war, it took so long to get the American troops back from Europe that it took almost a year for my mother to be able to be transported back. He was back in the States. They were married, and it took forever for her to get back to the States.
Did she retain her Scottish accent?
Only when angry at me.
So often then?
And then, yes, more often than it should have been. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
So in the years that followed, how did you find yourself on a golf course for the first time? How did that develop?
Wow, geez, we just my father was a pharmacist, and we moved here in San Jose, California. We moved about a block off a golf course. And I have an older brother, John, and how he did it, I don't know, but he found a couple of golf clubs. And then we would find golf balls that the members hit over the fence, and then we'd sneak onto the golf course and play. And of course, it was a private club. We didn't belong there. And we were escorted off the grounds a few times. And then finally, one day, the head professional, who was head professional on our golf course for, I don't know, close to 50 years, I think. But at any rate, said, get in my car, drove us home, and said, they're good boys. They're not causing harm. They just want to play golf, but it's a private club. And offered that if we worked around the golf shop, so on and so forth, that he would teach us how to play the game. And my father, having never played golf, said, geez, you guys really like this game. Well, yes, Pop, we really do. And so he tried it. Sure enough, we joined the club. He liked it. And that remains my home golf course to this day, San Jose Country Club.
And how long did it take for the young Maltbie to show some promise?
Well, it was kind of funny. The old assistant pro now passed away, but would tell for years that my brother was almost 5 years older than me. And so he and Dad would go out to play golf, and I would want to join them. And my dad said, one day when you get a little better, a little bigger, a little better, a little older, then you can play with us. And I guess I threw kind of a tantrum on the first tee and pointed at him and said, someday you're going to want to play golf with me. And I guess, golf at the beginning wasn't my favorite sport. I loved baseball. But I was just another kid, just another little kid at baseball and other sports. And at golf at a young age, other kids would look at me and say, hey, that's one of the guys we got to beat, And I think kids tend to gravitate to what they do best. And, by the time I was 13, 14, then it was the only sport I played. And I had pretty well decided what path I wanted to go on.
Yeah. I looked up, I did some research, as I tend to do before these things, and I noticed that you were in high school with Forrest Fessler.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very interesting. We lost Forrest a couple of years ago to a brain cancer, and sad, miss him. And he was a great player as a junior, and was a spectacular player as a junior and into his adult years, plagued by injury. But at any rate, he was 2 years older than I. So he was a junior in high school when I was a freshman. And he was the number one man on the golf team, and I was the number two man on the golf team. And he beat my Fanny every day. And it drove me crazy. Now, I don't know. I don't know what it is in me. I mean, you could have easily, said, I can't beat him. So, but I'm going to beat him someday. I'm going to do it. And it was funny my sophomore year, his senior year, the Santa Clara County High School Championship was being played, and he had a car, so he gave me a ride to the tournament. Well, as it turns out, we both tied at 2 under par 70 on a golf course called Santa Teresa, and went into a playoff, and I beat him on the second hole of the playoff. I made birdie. He was so mad he left me there.
Yeah.
But it's I really credit him for always showing me what excellence was like and making me point my compass in that direction. So I owe him the world for that.
I'm sure in retrospect, that was maybe the best thing that ever happened to you, was to have somebody like him to aim at that age.
Absolutely. Without doubt. There's no question. And when I got on the tour and he was already out there, he nearly won the U.S. Open in 1974, the massacre at Wingfoot.
Indeed, wearing shorts on one hole, I remember.
Well, that was later.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. He always kind of danced to the beat of a different drummer, but at any rate, he was a heck of a player, showed me the ropes when I first came out, and was one of the guys that made me learn that you just can't make too many birdies. It's pretty much impossible to make too many birdies. Kind of changed my wiring, yeah.
I actually have a kind of tenuous link to Forrest Fessler in that I caddied for him in the 1980 Tallahassee Open, believe it or not.
Wow.
And he hit 66 greens out of 72 in regulation or better and shot 1 over par. His putting by then it wasn't pretty, let me tell you.
Wow. Well, he was good when he was a kid. When he was a junior in high school, for all the matches and whatnot we played in qualifying, he averaged 68.6 for the year, which, as a kid of 16, that's pretty good. He was quite the player.
You mentioned very briefly there Hale Irwin. I was going to ask you about him but a little bit later, but we'll get to it now since you bring him up. There's a famous story, and I don't know how apocryphal this whole thing is, but Hale Irwin ended up not talking to you for 6 months, I hear. Run me through that story from start to finish at the 76 Memorial, I think it was.
Well, that was the first Memorial tournament, the inaugural Memorial tournament. And it was one of those very rare years, the course A being in its youth, and B, it was a dry year. We didn't have any rain. So the course played hard and fast and extremely tough. And I was leading after 3 rounds. And then in the fourth, the final round, I made 14 pars and 4 bogeys. I shot 76 to finish at 288. But up ahead of me was Hale Irwin, who was putting on a tremendous charge, playing well. He hit a ball out of bounds on the 15th hole. Anyway, we deadlock at even par. And, of course, Hale Irwin by this point is a man of conspicuous breed. I mean, he is a major championship winner.
Yeah.
He's a fabulous player. And I have to credit my late caddy, Jeff Burrell, who, when we got to the 15th tee, Jack had wanted a 3-hole playoff. And it was the first of its kind, and got CBS to sign off on the PGA Tour. So the playoffs started on 15, and I got there. Hale had finished earlier. I got there second, and I went up to shake Hale's hand and wish him good luck. And it's fair to say it was a dispirited handshake I received in return.
Yeah, he was quite a fierce competitor, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah. So, I'm standing there, and I don't know if my caddy could sense it or not, but, as I'm standing there, well, Hale thinks he's going to win. Jack thinks he's going to win. And everybody else watching thinks he's going to win. So at any rate, my caddy whispers in my ear, he says, this guy thinks he's going to win. And I had to laugh. And all the pressure of the moment went away. So we have 15 to 5 par with birdies. We both parred 16 to 3 par. So 17 now is sudden death. We're even after the 2 holes. And we both drive it in the fairway. I'm slightly away. And I pull hook my second shot left of the green. And all of a sudden there's a commotion. And my ball comes careening on to the center of the green. And at first, my fear was I hit somebody right in the forehead, and hurt somebody. Well, when we got up there, I should say next, Hale was none too pleased at that. and then played his second shot to about 10 feet from the hole. Played a wonderful 4-iron into the green. So when we got to the green, we learned that it hit a gallery rope stake that held up the ropes, a piece of galvanized steel. So I missed my putt, tapped in. I walked to the side, and I took my glove off and handed it to my caddy. He says, what are you doing? And I said, this guy ain't Hale Irwin because he misses these to win. And it was not a particularly hard putt. But by gosh, he missed. Well, the next hole, I drove it in the fairway, and he kind of hit it up by some trees. Anyway, I knocked it on the green, made a birdie putt, and he was none too happy still. And back in the days, the first year, the media, where you guys all hang out, the interview room and media room, was in the cart barn, reeked of battery acid underneath the clubhouse. So after the presentation and all that, I walk in and sit in the back of the room, and Hale is on the dais being interviewed. Well, at that time, the doors come open behind me, and a marshal comes in with this piece of rebar and hands it to me. He says, thought you might like to have this. So as I thanked him and turned around, Hale is staring holes through me. And if you can't see my face, I'm, for the listener here, I am doing this with a smile on my face.
Yeah, so I can confirm that. Yes.
Yeah, he's staring holes through me, and I just kind of shrugged and kind of held it aloft a little bit. And he said, "No, thanks. I've already had the shaft once today." And from then on, he did not speak to me for a good 6 months. So fast forward to 1977. And the Hawaiian Open played at Wailea Country Club on Oahu. And the clubhouse was on one side of a road, and you had to walk across it to get to the golf course. And on the left was the 9th green as the tournament played. And with a lava rock wall there. And Hale, the week previously, had won the Bing Crosby tournament after hooking a ball into the ocean on 18.
I remember
having
that.
It hit a rock and careening up into the fairway. So he ends up winning in a playoff over Jim Nelford. Goes on to birdie the hole and gets in a playoff with Jim Nelford, beats Jim in the playoff. So as I walk up to him doing this interview, I stand right behind the cameraman, nodding my head. And he had to stop the interview. And he looked at me and I said, "It's funny how a golf ball can bounce, isn't it?"
Did he laugh?
And after that, we were fine. Yes, he chuckled. of course, he was there. He received the great break, and and you learn, if you have any introspective side, that on any given golf shot, luck is a huge factor. And getting a ridiculously good bounce when you need it the most makes it exponentially so.
Yeah.
But you got to realize, over the course of thousands of golf shots, luck doesn't have much to do with it. The ball always kind of goes where you hit it.
Well, that's true. That's true. But
yeah.
Anyway, I kind of jumped ahead of you there, Roger, a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about your rookie year, which the year before you won Memorial. I mean, it's hugely successful, won twice. You were kind of off and running, but the story I do want to hear about is you probably told this a million times, but you're in the bar, you've left the check. What happened? Come on.
It's sad to think that all the really noteworthy things happened in my life 46 years ago.
Yeah. Well, no, we're only getting started. Don't worry.
So, at any rate, I had won in the Quad Cities, now called the John Deere Classic, but it was opposite the Open. And so limited field kind of thing. The tournament barely got pulled together. Anyway, I win this event, and with that gets me in the Tournament of Champions, the Masters, all those good things. But first place was only $15,000. So, which was all the money in the world to me at the time. Yeah. So the next tournament was in central Massachusetts, at Pleasant Valley Country Club, and called the Pleasant Valley Classic. At any rate, much bigger field, stronger field, $40,000 to first place. Well, I barely make the cut. I make the cut on the number, one shot higher, and I don't see the weekend. And Saturday dawns, the wind blew like crazy. I shot 66 and passed the world. And now I'm in the top 10. And on Sunday, it was breezy again, not quite as breezy as the day before, but another breezy day. So, but back then, this is hard to imagine, but I didn't even have a credit card. Really? Okay. I mean, I'm driving around in an old yellow Ford Galaxy 500 car and, just thrilled to have the opportunity to play. And at any rate, before the round, we could cash personal checks. PGA Tour approved all that. And I cashed a check for $600. So I just had a feeling I was going to win. Why? I don't know. So at any rate, I shoot 67 and I win. So we go into the clubhouse, and I buy around, and then I look at this fellow that had befriended me, that had been driving a courtesy car, driving me around that week. And I said, where do we go to have some fun? Well, he says a place called T.O. Flynn's in Worcester, Massachusetts. Off we go.
I'm impressed you can still remember the name of the bar. That's great.
Well, here's part of the story. The next morning when I came to, which there's a very distinct difference between waking up and coming to.
Yes.
I sat on the edge of my bed going, what happened? I don't know how long I sat there. It was a while before I even remembered I won a tournament the day before or what, the last two.
Yeah.
So I decide at this point that I'm going to go down and buy a newspaper and read about just how cool I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So I put my pants on. I don't have a dime, not a dollar, nothing. And, oh boy, I knew I had 600 plus the day before, and I'm searching around. What do I do now? And then it dawns on me, I don't have the check. Now I sit down on the edge of the bed again. Where was I last night? It was one of those.
Yeah.
So I finally ascertained where I was, and I called the restaurant, and somebody who's in there cleaning up from the night before answers the phone, and I said, geez, I lost something there last night. Do you have a lost and found? They said, no, what is it you lost? And I said, well, it was a check for $40,000. Yes, guy says, $40,000. I said, yep. So, well, we don't have it, So I hang up the phone and I called out to the golf tournament, the benefactor, owner of the golf course, and I think he owned most of central Massachusetts, a guy named Cuz Mangola. And I said, Cuz, I got a problem. He said, what kind of problem could you possibly have? And I said, well, I lost the winner's check last night in the bar. Now, you've all seen the pictures, on 18 Green, the big cardboard dummy check.
Yeah.
He handed me the check. He handed me the real check. So in my pocket it went, So at any rate, now I go, boy, that's done. He says, we'll stop payment, send you another one. I'll have a driver bring it over to you. So, now I get a phone call from the bar. It's the owner of the bar, says, we found it, and I said, well, I just got it voided. They're sending me another check.
Yeah.
He says, well, would you mind if we kept it and framed it and put it behind the bar here as a bit of bar lore? I said, help yourself.
Yeah.
So after hanging up that phone, this is a long story.
Yeah, it's good. I like it.
Yeah. But so after that transpired, I got to thinking after I hung up on that phone call, I go, I don't have any cash. I don't have a credit card. So I called back out to Cuz Mangola. I said, Cuz, have you sent the driver yet? He says, he's just going out the door now. I said, can you do me a favor? And he said, what's that? I said, can you make the check for $39,000 and send me $1,000 cash so I can get out of town? So that's what happened. Now, let's fast forward to about, I'm going to guess 5 years ago. And a golf writer such as yourself worked for the Golf Channel. And I apologize right now. I should know his name. I do know his name, but it's not coming to my lips right now. So at any rate, we were broadcasting one of the FedEx playoff events at the TPC of Boston. And about a 40-minute drive away was Pleasant Valley. So on the Wednesday before the tournament, this writer goes up to play golf there. And he's talking to the golf professional in the pro shop before teeing off. And he's saying, geez, there's a lot of history here, da-da-da-da-da. This tournament was played for a number of years. And he said, geez, this is where Maltbie lost his check, right? And the pro looked at him and said, yeah. He says, I've got it in my desk.
Wow.
And he goes, what? He says, I've got it, the check, original check in my desk. And he says, you've got to be kidding. He says, no. So he took him into his office, opened the drawer and said, here it is. They closed down that bar and the bar sent it back to the club. So, excuse me. So he says, well, don't you think Roger'd like to have that? And he goes, well, yeah, I suppose he would.
Yeah.
So a couple of days later, he drove down to the golf course and presented me the check I hadn't seen in 40 years. It was very funny.
Where is it hanging now?
It's not hanging, but it is in my office. I'm one of those guys, John, if you walked into my house, you would be very hard pressed to tell I was a golfer.
Right. Okay.
I've been in many great players' homes that seemed like a shrine to them, and I'm not really much for that. So there's no trophies on display. There may be the occasional photo you could tie me to golf, but I just don't do that stuff.
Well, I am hoping that there is something that you've still got. My memory of you back in that sort of period we're talking about is the outrageous trousers that you used to wear. Have you still got some of them hanging around?
Now, I take great personal offense at that. You watch how these kids dress now?
Well, that's true. But yeah, you would fit right in there.
Well, yeah, or in the day back then, you remember how Johnny Miller dressed?
Yes.
Exactly. Now, those trousers that I wore when I won the Memorial Tournament, I wore twice. I finished third in them and I finished first in them. And if 1976, if you recall, was the bicentennial year of the United States.
Yes.
So this was my red, white, and blue tribute to the good old U.S. of A. Now, I do agree with you. They were absolutely hideous. So we had a little party when I got home, my buddies and I, and now I've made $55,000 in 2 weeks, and I am really running. And so we had a few, and we torched them. we lit them up. We a little lighter fluid on them, and boom, there they go.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sad to hear that.
They had a good history, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, excuse me, not too long after that, again, one of my lasting memories of you is I tell people when they ask me about Roger Maltbie, and, did that guy ever play golf? Which I'll ask you probably hear that question as well sometimes. But I always say, yeah, Roger Maltbie is the guy who led the Open at Turnberry at the halfway stage before Nicklaus and Watson lapped the field. And they go, what? I said, yeah, Roger Maltbie was leading the field at Turnberry in 1977. What's your memories of that?
Yeah, winner, chicken dinner. You win a lot of trivia contests with that. But I did. You're right. And do you know who caddied for me that week?
Oh, now there's a good question. Oh, you've got me there.
Yeah. See if you get this one. Nah.
It wasn't Steve Williams, was it?
Dennis Watson.
Oh, right. Of course. Yeah.
A young, at the time, Zimbabwean professional that had come and attempted to qualify for the Open, did not make it, was sitting around the putting green after that and going, looking for somebody. And by gosh, we hooked up. And years later now, you go from 77 to 1985, and he and I are paired together in the last round of the World Series of golf at Firestone.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to come out on top that day. But yeah, that's kind of funny how the world works.
Yeah. So what's your memories of Turnberry 77?
Wow. Well, see, first of all, I took my mom and dad back with me. My father was, not shot down, but had to eject over occupied France and came upon a farmhouse. And we'll tell you the story how the Nazis were shooting holes in his parachute and all that. And anyway, escaped to a farmhouse that happened to be connected with the French underground, got him falsified papers, this and that. He became Francois Le Gouillac. At any rate, They got him out of there. He went back with my mom. The same family lived in that house.
Get away. Jeez.
Yeah, he found the house. And, what can I do with it? He said they were still washing clothes, pounding them on a rock, that kind of stuff, And so he bought them a washer and dryer.
Oh, what a great story.
How about it?
Yeah.
That's my greatest memory. Other than that, of course, I'd never played links golf. I'd never played golf over there.
Yeah.
But I immediately took a fancy to it. There are many Americans that don't take a fancy to it. It is quite unlike the game played in the States.
Yeah.
But to me, the nature of the game in my very favorite golf courses are there's very little in the way of boundaries. Forget penalty areas, water, those kinds of things. The whole nature of the game is to you hit it, you find it, you hit it again.
Yeah.
And you keep doing that until you hole out, right?
Yeah.
That's golf. And I liked that. I liked very much that you could hit a good one that didn't turn out so good.
Yeah.
You could hit one that's kind of a stinker and it could turn out great. You never really kind of knew. And it just intrigued me. I just loved it. I just did. So at any rate, it was very, very hot that year,
Yeah,
and rather still.
Yeah.
So not facing a whole lot in the way of elements. And I do remember that the Scots were maybe the most sunburnt people I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was hot, and it was really something. I remember staying at the Turnberry Hotel.
Yep.
And as well as my mom and dad and all that. And this was more money than I'd ever spent for a hotel room anywhere on the planet at that point.
I can imagine.
And I'm leading the championship. Now, remember, back then, it finished on Saturday.
That's right, yeah.
So Friday night, the third round has been completed. And, of course, you tee off so late in the day because it's like, I mean, it's kind of strange. But at any rate, I finished my round and didn't play particularly well and was no longer in the lead. But anyway, I wander into the hotel looking for dinner and after my round and was told that dinner hours had closed and it was no longer available.
Yeah.
And we ended up having to drive down to, oh gosh.
Would it be Girvan?
Just south of there?
Yeah, the little town Girvan is the next town, yeah.
Yeah, that may have been it. Went into a pub and had the best Chinese food I've ever had anywhere in my life. It was unbelievable, yeah. But that was very odd. At any rate, what I remember most is from a golfing standpoint, obviously I played very well the first 2 days. And on Saturday, or Friday, I should say, there was a thunderstorm.
Mm.
And I do have a photo, not displayed, but of Hubert Green. I was paired with Hubert, and we were on the rocks down to the left of the 8th hole, I guess it was, down by the water.
Yeah, yeah.
And, trying to get low because we had this thunderstorm go through. Didn't do much in the way of rain, but we had lightning. And then Saturday, can't make that connection. Saturday, I was in the group immediately ahead of two guys, Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah, those two guys. Yeah.
Yeah, those two guys. And I had never seen anything like it. And if your memory will serve you going back to then, there was a period where a time when Nicklaus sat on his bag and said, "Get them under control."
Yes, that's right. They
were delirious at the Birdie Fest and the match that Nicklaus and Watson were putting on. And I was way out of my element. I think I shot 80 the last day.
Really?
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, the crowds were roaring up every hole, deliriously happy at what was transpiring behind us. And it was dusty because it had been so hot and dry, and the dust would choke you. I mean, it was really something. And I didn't do well at all. But at any rate, it's kind of fun. I didn't have an eyewitness view, but I felt like I was kind of part of one of the greatest major championships ever played.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's still famous.
Yeah.
And I was looking at your record, though, Roger. You didn't go back to the Open until it was back there at Turnberry in '86.
As it turned out, and the reason for that being is I ended up marrying my wife now of 41 years at what is now the John Deere Classic in the Quad Cities in the U.S.
Yeah.
And it was her hometown.
Right.
And the place I first won. So it had a couple of tugs on my heartstrings. And, I just made a deal with her that, I would play there. I didn't consider myself a world-class player that would go over there. And certainly there was a period where my game was such that who am I kidding? If I went over, I probably wasn't going to win or have a chance to win. So I just played at the Quad Cities. That's just how it turned out.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that because obviously, as you say, you took to it and you did well, at least for 3 rounds. And then, it was 9 years before you went back. So.
Yeah. It's, it's just life. Life got in the way of me playing it. Yeah.
I was looking also at your record, Roger, and, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, but you were a better player than your record in the majors would suggest. I mean, it's not as nearly as good as I thought it was going to be when I looked it up. Obviously, with the notable exception of the 87 Masters. Again, a trivia question. Who's the guy who, if he'd shot par in the last round of the 87 Masters, would have won it? That's you.
Me, yeah.
What's your memories of that? That must rank as your biggest disappointment as a player, I'm sure.
Well,
or up there.
It's one of my most fond memories, and also one that becomes more bittersweet the older I get. I shot 76 in the first round, and again, the change had come at Augusta, where the greens had been converted from a Bermuda green base that was overseeded to a bent grass. And when we putted on them prior to that, they were really fast compared to what else we played. But this kicked it into another gear when they were in bent grass, And people would ask, well, what's it like putting there? And you'd say, well, probably 3 times a day on average, you'll have a putt that you look at and say, if I just mess this up a little bit, I could putt it right off the green.
Yeah.
Those face you all the time. Anyway, so I shot 76, windy, greens hard, and felt like I really played well. So not a good first day, but second day, out early, before wind, because the conditions kind of duplicated themselves in round 2. But I got out early and I shot 66 and zoomed up the leaderboard. That ended up being, I think, tied with Norman for the low round of the tournament.
Right.
At any rate, went out with Curtis Strange on Saturday. Trying to remember if we were the last group or second to last group, but anyway, shot 70. And now I'm in the last group with Ben Crenshaw on Sunday, of course, who is Augusta's darling.
Yeah.
And everybody loves Ben everywhere. Who doesn't? I love Ben. Everybody loves
We all do. You're right.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you got to love Ben. So at any rate, I birdie the 8th hole and take the lead. And Crenshaw, as he was wont to do, visited most places on Augusta National and was making a putt every hole. Yeah. And okay, God love him. You had to expect something like that, and he delivered. And we were kind of neck and neck there. But I got on the 10th tee with the lead on Sunday, and they say, the Masters doesn't begin until the second 9 on Sunday. Well, they're not lying. No. Oxygen was a little hard to come by.
I can imagine. Yes.
Yeah. And I bogeyed 10 and 11. And then 3 putted from reasonably short distance at 14. At any rate, I fell back, and then I did birdie 17, the 71st hole, and I had a chance to tie on 18. And what I will take with me to my grave is on 18, how many guys had the opportunity to win the Masters tournament on the 72nd hole?
Yeah.
Not all that many.
You should be proud of that.
I drove it right. I drove it right in the heart of the fairway, and the hole was cut left where it traditionally is, front left. Mm-hmm. And I was going to use the backboard, a slope there behind the hole, to bring it back to the flag and hit a 6-iron. And it's as good a swing as I've ever made. I hit it exactly square and what I wanted to do. And I was waiting for the crowd to give it, Here it comes down, and I'm going to have a putt to throw up on, to see if I can make it or not. But then they kind of went, oh, and I knew right where it was, and it was just on top of the back ledge. And then that's when it works against you that you watch the tournament every year since you were a little kid, because nobody has ever made this putt.
That's right.
Ever.
Yeah.
But I got it down at 2, and I finished one shot out of the playoffs. So, to have that experience was fabulous. To feel that I had a chance to win, which I did, that'll be a fond memory from forever when I watch it. And it is one of the events that I watch every day, every minute.
Yeah.
And to think that I could be in one of those neat little coats and standing there under the oak trees and back. I mean, it would be, it hurts a little bit, but a great experience.
Yeah. There's I would imagine you have mixed feelings about something like that. There's the pride in playing as well as you did, but also the regret that you just weren't 2 shots better.
Right. Yeah. You think if I shoot even par in the back 9, I win.
Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda. Tough by name, tough by nature. This sports turf variety supplied by Lawn Solutions Australia is taking sport to another level. With superior drought tolerance, speedy recovery and toughness, Tiff Tough really is the smart grass. For more information and your nearest supplier, head to lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
Anyway, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm keeping you here, but we haven't even talked about broadcasting yet. What was the timing of that? I know it was sort of 91 you kind of got into it, but were you ready for a change at that point, or how was your game, or where were you at sort of playing-wise?
Well, my game was in pretty good shape. Easily the best year I ever had was 85. Nearly won a couple of times in 86, but didn't. In 87, I had that Masters. And then late in the year, the last event of the year was the Pensacola Open on Perdido Key outside of Pensacola.
Yeah.
And I struck a shot from out of the fairway, and the club caught on a tuft of grass, and I injured my left shoulder. As it turned out, I tore the labrum of my left shoulder. So I tried to play in 88 with it, and that was not working. So in 88, I had surgery on it. And so came back in 89 and tried to play. And if I practiced very much at all, it would get inflamed and hurt.
Right.
So I couldn't give to the game what I needed to do. And then had it operated on again in 90 after trying to fight through it for a couple of years without much success. So I was approached by NBC after that second surgery if I would be interested in being involved in the Bob Hope Desert Classic broadcast. I'd never done it before. And the reason they asked me is the Bob Hope tournament was a 5-round, 90-hole event, played over 4 different courses. And they just got the technology of a RF camera, radio frequency camera.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't be tied to long cables and whatnot. And at any rate, so, this is back in the days before cable television.
Yeah.
And networks did 2-hour broadcasts every tournament.
Yeah. 2
hours Saturday, 2 hours Sunday, supposed to being on all day, every day now. But at any rate, on Saturday, the celebrity part of the field was scheduled to play at what they called the home course, which was Indian Wells that year. So all the stars and whatnot would be there. Well, the leader could be on another golf course, and they'd never show a single shot the guy hit because they couldn't. So they asked, they said there could be the need, there could be a leader at another course. And would you do it? So fine. Well, as it turns out, the leader was Mark O'Meara on Saturday, starting the day. And he was playing Bermuda Dunes about 7 miles away. So the deal I made with NBC at the time was that, I'd played in enough Bob Hope tournaments. I was on the mend. And if you let me broadcast the Ryder Cup later in the year,
yeah,
the War at the Shore, the
yes.
big one at Kiowa.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Things had come to a head, and I wanted to be there, and the odds of me getting there as a player were next to nothing. So they said, yes, we'll let you do that. They need extra announcers. Great. So at any rate, they send me over there, and I said, no, I've never done this. You got to help me. And they go, we'll have a nice long rehearsal. Don't worry about a thing. You know the game. This will be fine. So I go over there. None of my equipment works. Nothing. So now they've got to send a repair crew from 7 miles away to come out to try to fix my stuff.
Yeah.
So by the time they get through monkeying around with my stuff, we're on the air. So the first words I ever said were on the air. I had no rehearsal.
Right.
So I get through that. I go back to Indian Wells, and if you've ever been around a TV compound after a round is over, the broadcast is over, it's a ghost town in moments.
Yeah.
Everybody's gone.
Yeah.
So I go back, there's nobody there. And so I see the producer getting into his car, which at the time was a fellow named Larry Cirillo, and he said the best things to me that have ever been said to me about television in that moment. And I said, you got to throw me a rope, pal. I'm drowning. I don't know what I'm doing. Your lingo, the things you talk about, I've never even heard. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And he looked at me and he said, listen, just be yourself. Don't try to be anything else. Just be yourself. Best advice I ever got.
Yeah.
So now you want to get to the Ryder Cup? We'll get to the Ryder Cup.
Well, I wanted to ask you, at what point or how long did it take before you started into Kiowa? How long did it take you to stop thinking of yourself as a player and start thinking of yourself as a broadcaster? Or is it still a mixture of the two?
Well, I guess you're always kind of a player at heart, even though you can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And, the career, this is my 30th year doing this.
Yeah, I know.
When I first started doing it, I was a player. I knew all of them. They knew me, played with all of them. They played with me. And then things kind of morphed over time where I didn't know quite as many of them or play with them.
Yeah.
And now it's to the point where, oh, you played golf?
Yes, I know.
Yeah. But that's what happens. I mean, when I'm going to say 25 years, Nicholas and I were the only two players to have played in every memorial tournament.
Right.
And that was something I took pride in. And I walked into registration one day, and a young man named Charles Howell was sitting there registering as well. And the guys behind the registration desk were very kind. They said, all right, our first champion is here. We can start the event now, just being nice.
Yeah.
And Charles looked up at me and he says, you won this tournament? I said, yeah, the first year in 1976. I said, you probably weren't even born yet. And he looked at me and went,
no.
That's when it dawned on me. And that's when I started becoming not a player.
Yeah.
And more of a media guy. And
Well, I don't think that's a bad thing, Roger. I mean, my view on the best two broadcasters, former players who've been broadcasters, in my view anyway, are Johnny Miller and Peter Allis, both of whom were great players. But the reason I thought they were part of the reason why they were so good at broadcasting was that they stopped thinking of themselves as players and became broadcasters. I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to have colleagues, people you compete with, this and that. It's at hard times to be critical as you should.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When you see a misplay or a poorly thought out shot or strategy, that's your job as a broadcaster. Now, Johnny didn't have too much trouble with that.
No,
it probably took me a little. Longer, but it was. Well, what can I say? It's just been a long, lovely career, and as it turns out, I will be better known as a broadcaster. And it's not like I didn't have any success playing, but I will be better known. I will certainly have made more money and whatnot being a broadcaster than I was a golfer.
Yeah.
Right,
let's get back to the Ryder Cup. I'm keen to talk to you about. You've covered a few Ryder Cups, but I wanted to ask you first was, how close were you ever to actually playing in the damn thing?
I was very close. Let me see the year. It would have been 85 probably, or 87, maybe 87. I'm trying to think because I'd had a good 85, 86. I played pretty well. And back then there were no captain's picks. And I think I just missed. And it was either 85 or 87. I don't recall. But back then, the Ryder Cup wasn't what it is today.
No.
It wasn't the Boilermaker. It was, really a goodwill match. And I'm sure spirited competition. I mean, UK, Great Britain, and Ireland, they wanted to win, and we wanted to win. And, competitors are competitors. But certainly in the eyes of the world, it didn't have the same cachet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about what it's become?
Oh, boy. Well, it has become a spectacular sporting event. Okay. Do I think at times golf leaves its genteel and proper ways?
Yes.
And becomes something else that I don't like to see. And to be, perfectly honest, it happens too often or more often on this side of the pond than it does on your side of the pond.
Yeah, I think the worst incidents with the crowds have been, most of them have been in America. You're right. So.
Yeah, I think that's the case. But it's not, things get said over there too that shouldn't be
absolutely. There's faults on both sides, definitely. Yeah.
Yes. But certainly I think America bears the brunt of that kind of stuff. So, and I think Kia was really the first one.
Yeah.
And it as to my television career, all I am is signed up to do the Bob Hope and the Ryder Cup in 91.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm a player.
Yeah.
I'm healing. I'm going to go back to playing golf. And I was fortunate to have a 10-year exemption, which they issued back then for winners of the World Series of golf.
Yeah.
And so I was still exempt. So come Sunday singles, I have, you're going to love this, the David Faherty.
Oh, brilliant.
And Stewart match.
Excellent. I didn't know that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And Faherty is ripping Payne Stewart apart.
Yeah.
Pounding Payne Stewart.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you remember, and back then, Mark Calcavecchia, this was extremely spirited man, is playing Colin Montgomery.
Yeah.
And they're up ahead of our match a few groups. And Calcavecchia is Dormy 4.
Yeah.
That was the terminology of the day.
Yes.
Not changed, but terminology of the day. So all Calcavecchia had to do was bogey any one of the last 4 holes, and it looks like the U.S. is going to win the Ryder Cup. Well, he doesn't win any of the last 4 holes. He loses all, which included a kind of a meltdown at 17, a shank off the tee on a par 3 into the water.
Yeah.
At any rate, so the executive producer of NBC Sports at the time was a fellow named Terry O'Neill. And he was in the production truck, standing behind the producer, adding whatever it is he wants into the show, and so on and so forth. And his voice comes into my ear saying, "Roger, leave your group. That's over. Go find Mark Calcavecchia and interview him."
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm doing what I'm told. So, and I go and I find Calcavecchia. He's with Peter Costas,
his coach,
who is both my instructor and his.
Right.
Peter was there doing the broadcast for USA Network on Friday.
Yeah,
that wasn't on network. Friday was USA. So I find him in the USA trailer in the TV compound, and Mark is bent over. A trash can in there, being violently ill.
Wow.
And kind of shrieking, and his eyes are swollen shut. I mean, he thinks he's cost the U.S. the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
So he looks up at me, and Peter looks at me, and I go, "Okay, guys, I got it. I'm not going to do that. I'm a player. I'm going to have to play with Mark Calcavecchia. I'm not, plus I don't know clinically, what would be a nervous breakdown, but I know Calcavecchia's had enough.
Yeah.
Okay. He's had enough, and he's not ready to talk. So out I go. I walk over to our production truck, open the door, and there's Terry O'Neill standing in the doorway. And he said, "I thought I told you to find Calcavecchia and interview him." And I'm a golfer. I'm not a TV guy.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I found him. He's here in the compound, but he can't talk." And he says, "I said, go find Mark Calcavecchia and interview him."
Yeah.
And I said, he can't talk.
Yeah.
No, stay with him. He'll talk. And I said, "I got a better idea for you. Why don't you stay with him, and maybe he'll talk to you, but I'm not doing it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I shut the door. They didn't ask me to do another thing the rest of the day. I was done.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, that's it for TV. Big deal. I'll go back to playing, right? 3 weeks later, they called me. The same man called me and offered me a job.
Yeah, it was maybe the best thing you ever did.
I got no idea. At any rate. So back then, when I first signed with NBC, they were only doing a few events a year. Their broadcast schedule wasn't what it would be now. So I could play, because what I had found is that I couldn't play as much as I used to. I had the luxury of this exemption, where I could play some golf and do some TV, and maybe it would be a good idea to get my foot in the door on this thing. And then when it turned out in 95, when NBC garnered the rights to the USGA events, the US Open, and Opens and Amateurs and stuff, then I had to make a choice. Their schedule expanded, and my exemption was running out. And I was in my early 40s, And, I had to make a choice of some kind. And I figured, and I think rightly so, that if I was going to be the next Jack Nicklaus, I probably would have gotten that done by now.
Yeah, good point.
I jumped on the TV deal, and it turns out it certainly was the right choice and one I've enjoyed a lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, to sort of thought to myself, I'll ask Roger what have been the highlights of his broadcasting career. I mean, I thought, what a silly question, because I'm pretty sure that a good number of them at least will be involving Tiger Woods. You've been very lucky to be up close and see him probably at his best. That must have been something to see that close.
Well, yeah, without doubt. And that's one of the greatest things about what my particular role is. And sometimes people don't understand what a myopic view I have of a golf tournament. They're watching all the shots, and I'm seeing two guys basically play on the weekend. And there is the beauty, therein lies the beauty of what I do. And to this day, still excites me, and I still love. I'm watching the best players in the world playing their best.
Yeah.
While they're at their best. And when you got to catch Tiger at his best, oh boy. I mean, there was nothing like it. I mean, I had played with Jack when Jack was in his prime, and Tiger, and I always tell people, Jack Nicklaus is the greatest golfer of all time. His record demands that. Okay. But Jack Nicklaus couldn't play golf like Tiger Woods.
I mean, I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I think Tiger's best golf is the best golf we've ever seen, I think.
Absolutely. When you look at him in 2000, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Win the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach by 15.
I know. Yeah.
And then go win the Open by 8.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. There was nobody to touch him. He was unbelievable. I mean, he really was. He did things on the golf course that just made you go, how does he do that? And when he really needed one, it always went in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, think about 2008 at Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
The putt he makes on the last green, and they show the replay of it. This thing's bouncing over the broccoli tops of Poana and moving around and goes in. But as you stood there, by the 18th green, there were these thousands and thousands of people. And each and every one of them knew that putt was going in.
Yeah, I was one of those people.
No matter what.
Yeah, I saw.
And so did Rocket.
Yeah.
You knew it was going in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would be some of the other highlights that Tiger's done, the shots he's hit, and you've just gone, wow?
Oh, geez. Well, there's one, I guess, maybe my best known call was on the 6th hole at Pebble Beach in Friday's round in 2000 at the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
And I would be in the tower at 18 with Chris Berman from ESPN.
Yeah.
Early coverage was on ESPN. And Tiger drove it in the right rough. Now, we'd seen players drive it in that right rough, and it was like automatic pitch out to the fairway, short of this giant hill and cliff that you'd have to play across with your second if you were in the fairway. But now you've got to do that for your third. So all of a sudden, Tiger wanders in there with this iron and just makes this most unbelievably hard swing. And the ball comes up and out. He's trying to knock it up on top of this cliff. The next thing you know, the ball is rolling up on the edge of the green. And I said, it's just not a fair fight.
Yeah, that's good.
And it wasn't. It wasn't a fair fight.
No, not then. It wasn't. No.
Yeah, right. That's one that really stands out to me. Gosh, there have been so many. It's hard to single them out.
I could imagine.
Obviously,
yeah.
The putt at 18 at Torrey in 2008. Now I'm trying to remember if it was in the final round or the playoff. Tiger on the 15th hole at Torrey Pines drove it way right into a fairway bunker. Had to play this humongous fucking thing and knocked it on the green reasonably close. I mean, it was just, you can't do it. That's what he did. He did stuff you can't do it. Yeah. I wish I could have better recall for it.
No, it's not. It's just it's always difficult off the top of your head. But the thing about him was, and you mentioned it, Nicklaus did the same. When they absolutely had to make a putt, they always did.
Yeah. And I remember, those they're wired different. Okay, they're just wired different. And from having won that first Memorial, it probably gave me a little better chance to be around Jack. At times, maybe than I otherwise might have. And I'm sitting after a round in practice. I'm sitting in the grill room there at Muirfield Village. And, Jack comes in and says, "Hey, can I join you?" "Yeah, please do."
Yeah.
We just get to chatting. And I said, "Jack, I got a question for you." And I said, "How is it you never play bad?" You never play bad. You just, maybe around here and there, but you look at his major records and the seconds and the thirds and the this and that. It's ridiculous. How is it you never play bad? And he looked at me and said, "Because I won't let it happen." So you walk away from that. You think, well, that's kind of a simple flip answer. And then you stop in your tracks and you go, well, that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
Because his mind would not let it happen. It was not acceptable and was not going to happen. And nobody ever saw Jack Nicklaus tap in a putt with the back of his putter blade. Every shot, every time got full attention.
Yeah.
And Tiger really was the same way. You never saw him give up. Even if he was having a bad week in his bad years, he tried on every shot as hard as he could.
The thing about Nicklaus is, the 18 majors is mind-boggling enough, but he was first or second in 37 majors. Think about that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and then add in the thirds.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden you're talking like, what? 15 years he finished first, second, or third in every major. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, mind you, I've also got a theory, and see what you think of this. That there's a case to be made that Sam Snead might have been the greatest golfer of all time because he was great longer than anybody else was great.
His longevity was unbelievable, and I'll tell a story. In 1999, the U.S. Open that Payne Stewart won at Pinehurst, rest his soul. And we were going to do an interview, Dan Hicks and I, with Sam.
Yeah.
And because he was like the king of Pinehurst. He had won jillions of events on Pinehurst, number 2. So his manager and people were saying, listen, Sam has good days and not so good days, And so the decision was made that we would interview Sam on tape. And if he was, we don't want to embarrass the great man. And if he was, having a good day, great. And if he wasn't, well, thanks. And we're not going to use it,
Yeah.
And so at any rate, we're asking him questions about the U.S. Open and this and that. And he's going, well, there was that time there and this happened and over there. Not saying the tournament, the year, nothing. It was just not working.
Mm-hmm.
So our producer is in our ear saying, this isn't going to work. Thank him. And, that's it. And as the producer is saying that, Dan Hicks asked Sam do you ever think about not having won the U.S. Open? And at that split second, he kicked in.
Right.
And he said, I think about it every day.
Yeah.
And at that moment, he was totally cogent. And Dan asked him, you finished in the top 10 in a major championship well into your 50s.
Yeah.
What did you owe your longevity? And he said, he says, I got plenty of sleep. He says, I didn't drink much.
Yeah.
And then he got this little grin on his face.
Yeah, I can see.
But I sure did shake those bed springs now and then.
Well, that was always his reputation.
Yeah. The decision was made not to air that interview. It was pretty cute.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned, not winning the US Open there. The other name that always comes to mind is obviously Phil Mickelson for that. I mean, and I wanted to ask you about in particular, Winged Foot in 2006, because you probably don't remember, but back in the day when I was doing a Sunday newspaper column, you were the subject of that column that day. I got into, talking about your mother and Kirkintilloch and your father. And I actually got a very nice email from your dad not long after that, thanking me for doing that column, but which was very nice of him. But I wanted to ask you about that. You obviously got a close-up view of what transpired on the 18th hole there at Winged Foot. Looking at it then, what were you saying? And looking at it now, what do you think?
Well, forgive me if you're hearing that noise. A garbage truck is going on.
All right.
On my front porch.
Don't worry.
At any rate, Phil was setting about doing something that was unthinkable because he hit it all over the golf course. Now, everyone knows in their right mind, you win U.S. Opens by hitting the ball in the fairway, on the green, and that's the proper way to do it. Well, Phil was everywhere, being Phil.
Yeah.
And he gets up to the 18th tee, and it's a, as they all are, a narrow par 4 that would go out flat, and then the green, the hole would dogleg left, and the green would sit up on a perch. Yeah. And the left side of the fairway really wasn't premium. You pretty much had center to right side of the fairway was where you needed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phil pulls out a driver. And Johnny's going, what is he thinking? And this is what makes for great television and made Johnny great. It's easy to say after the fact, I can't believe he did this, but we were saying it prior, and I was involved in that discussion with Johnny. I don't understand. Anyway, he hits this thing miles to the left, and I think my call, that's left, way, way left, bounces off a tent, comes down now, fortunately, into an area where the gallery is all walked. The lie is pretty bare.
Yeah.
And now there's this gap in these huge trees up ahead of him that maybe you could fit a very, very small something through. But, Phil's looking right at that deal. Well, he tries that, fires it right into the trees. Now it comes down again. And he had a shot to hit up and over, which he hits in a bunker left of the green. And it was a meltdown is what it was. Anyway, he makes double bogey and it is a shame that he would finish runner up 6 times in that event and not win it. It really is, because for him to win a U.S. Open with the style of golf he plays and the way he drives the ball would be pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
The one thing about Arnold Palmer, who had a brilliant Open record, only won it once, but a brilliant U.S. Open record, is he was a great driver at a golf ball. I mean, he'd hit 12 lasers a day and maybe 2 that were kind of low and left. But he would drive the ball beautifully. But Phil, no. I mean, he doesn't do that.
No.
So for him to win a U.S. Open would be a remarkable feat in many ways.
Did you see much of what Monty did? Were you aware of what Monty had done just before Phil playing the left?
No.
No.
You know, again, I see two guys.
Yeah.
He was up ahead, and I knew that something bad had happened. That was obvious from crowd response, this and that, but I didn't know what.
Yeah.
I didn't know what.
Is that the worst kind of meltdown that you've seen? I mean, how difficult is it to commentate or comment on something like that as it's happening without being too harsh? You know, you've got to sort of balance what you're saying. I would imagine.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if it's the worst meltdown I've seen. One that comes. Well, of course, I was a kid. Palmer's kind of meltdown at Olympic Club.
In
66 was awful. Again, at Olympic Club just recently, Lexi Thompson kind of folded up in the U.S. Women's Open. They happen, but it is uncomfortable when you see it happening. And probably what makes it so uncomfortable is that it's about to happen. You can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it coming. And that is uncomfortable. And you don't like to be involved in those.
No, I mean, I just say because I know that television has broadcasting's not like journalism. We can be a bit harder on people when they do things like that. So you've got a fine balancing line to walk along, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a different type of journalism. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Just to finish up, Roger, how much do you owe to Gary Koch and the Liberty Mutual? 3 senior wins it's got here, all with Gary Koch, it says here. So.
What the hell, you think I had nothing to do with that?
I knew you would say that.
No, Gary is a player that to this day is still a fine player.
Yeah.
And he made his choice to get into television years ago because the game was just kind of driving him nuts.
Yeah. And
he didn't want to feel like that anymore. But he could still really play. So I hitched my wagon to a very good horse. And he was certainly the leader of our group. We billed ourselves as the odd couple.
Right.
He was Felix and I was Oscar.
Right. Okay.
I was the mess that would get there kind of late. He was always in charge of the scorecard, making sure we know what times we were playing, making the reservations for dinner in the evening. He would handle all the details. And I was there trying to get him to relax and just play.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the limit of what I did. Yeah.
Plus, Roger, of course, that he's never won a tournament in Morocco.
Oh, yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he never won that one. That was interesting. It was not yet on a European tour. It was kind of a pro-am-y thing. But that really was pretty instrumental for me because I had gone through some dark years where my instructor had passed and he was the only instructor I ever had. I was lost and searching for help. And at any rate, a win there kind of validated that the work I was doing was positive. Mm-hmm. And then I carried that with me. So that helped a lot. That really did.
Yeah. 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 As I say, there's not too many people. You're the first person I've interviewed who's A, won in Morocco, and is B, being the California State Amateur Champion and the California State Open Champion. So, I mean,
it's a very unique deal.
I mean, isn't that great research?
Jack Nicklaus's name on any of those trophies.
Yeah, not yet. Anyway, not yet.
Yeah, right.
Roger, I'm aware that I've kept you for nearly an hour and a half here. I've been very grateful for your time. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you. It's been brilliant. Thank you for your time.
Well, you're more than welcome, John, and I can't wait till we can catch up eyeball to eyeball again.
Yeah, I hope so.
What a storyteller, and so much more to Roger Maltbie in his career than I realised, and I hope that you, like me, have come away from that chat knowing more about the man than when we started. That's episode 49 done and dusted, but make sure to join us when we come back in 2 weeks for the next instalment of The Thing About Golf.